Welcome everyone to the Prevent Food Waste in the First Place webinar. This is our seventh out of 7 webinars this spring. We do them in the spring and the fall, a series. And it's for the Master Compost Recycler program. Tonight we're joined with the Green Neighbors program, both Clark County Public Health. And we're really excited to have 2 wonderful speakers who are passionate about this topic, have lots of information to share. So we'll get right into it. We've got Meg Johnson with Waste Connections of Washington and Liz Erickson from the City of Vancouver. So take it away.
So again, I'm Liz Erickson. I work for the City of Vancouver in our solid waste department. I manage education and outreach around reducing, reusing, and recycling in the City of Vancouver. Meg, you want to say a few words?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Liz. My name is Meg Johnson. I work for Waste Connections. We are the garbage and recycling hauler here in Clark County.
So this first slide you're seeing is kind of our agenda, what we're going to cover today. So we're going to watch a short video that is just worth it, called A Love Letter to Food. We're going to talk about just the overall problem of what food waste is and kind of the context that we're working in. And we'll talk about why it happens, why this matters. And then we're going to end up our time with where do we go from here? So what are some strategies that are best practices and how can we, and we'll kind of end with what can we walk away with? What can we actually try to do right now or tomorrow? We're looking at, almost half of the food that is wasted was edible. And that's, there's 2 parts to this. There's edible food that's thrown away. So whether it's edible, like it's the crust or it's the potato peel, or it's just the leftovers that rot in the back of the fridge. But then there's also the food scraps that kind of wouldn't be deemed as edible, like an orange peel or an apple core. And so we are kind of talking about both of these items, but in particular, we're going to focus on that first group of food that could have been eaten somewhere along the way. And so in Washington, recent studies have found that 4.5 million tons of waste is disposed of in Washington, and almost 1 million tons, 780,000 tons of that is food. And over about half of that could have been eaten. So it's a measurable problem and definitely fixable.
The other thing we have to consider as well when we're thinking about wasted food and, preventing food waste in the first place, even before the pandemic, about 1/3 of all Washington homes were food insecure. So they didn't have enough food to eat in the first place. So we have to be mindful that we are making the best choices, not only for us and our dietary needs, but thinking that, 1 out of every 3 of your neighbors is not getting enough food. And we need to be conscious of that as well.
And to kind of reframe the problem of hunger, it's not because there isn't enough food. It's just not getting to the people that need it.
Does anyone have any thoughts about what this might represent?
Any guesses? All right, Meg, you ready to do the spoiler?
I am. So what you're seeing here is what a family of 4 on average wastes in a month. What they intentionally buy, bring home, and then goes directly into the garbage, either by not using it successfully or having things spoil before they have the capability of eating it. So in a single month, a family of 4 wastes about 19 pounds of grain, just about 13 pounds of perishable items, lots of meat, so much meat. And as you saw in the video earlier, meat is a double-edged sword. It not only wastes the meat that could be eaten by us, but it also wastes all of the food that animal ate to become the meat that we are eating. So that's a double one there. Lots of fresh fruit and veg. I know that I have personally bought a lot of fresh fruit and veg and have it go bad before I have the ability to make something into it. or make something out of it. I understand that completely. You see all of this beautiful food. This is what usually a family of 4 wastes in a month. Over the year, that equates to a price tag of about $1,500 that is just being thrown away because it's not being eaten.
And to see that across the nation, again, it's a huge portion of our landfills. So of course, there's waste happening on the farm. There's waste happening on all the whole process of food being grown and processed and distributed and sold at the grocery store. So there's waste all along the way. And there's little that we as individuals can do about that. We can make a voice. We can, shop with our feet, go to farmers markets and things, and we'll talk about strategies. But so the piece we're talking about is what's in our control. Like once we've brought that home, if you buy 5 bags of groceries, it's equivalent to leaving one of them to rot in the grocery store parking lot. And
you
so
wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that by nature. We wouldn't
Right.
want to see, one of our 5 grocery bags immediately be thrown away or just gone. So we have to take into consideration that we have a little bit of control. We have the ability to make a little bit of change for ourselves.
So we have cultural forces that promote the wasting of food. So for some people, it's striking a balance of, I don't want to waste food and I want to be a quote unquote good host when we go back to hosting people and have plenty of food for everyone, but not so much that a bunch of it's going to get wasted at the end. So I take this moment to acknowledge that we're working against cultural factors too, that their intent isn't to waste food, but they end up wasting food. So while there's, over 50 million tons of food sent to landfills each year, 40% of it is from our household. So we can have an impact.
Yep.
It's hard for us to impact that upstream piece. But here's where we have immediate day-to-day control. And so why waste is going to happen? It's because we value it differently than we value other products. I appreciate the information shared about how not only in the US compared to other countries, we spend less proportionally percentage of our income on food. So we aren't really paying its true cost. It's not a significant relative portion of our budget compared to other countries. Year over year over year, we're paying less and less and less percentage of our income towards food. And if we don't, if something's not expensive or take up a lot of our budget, we're not going to value it as much. A lot of subsidies, and this gets into a whole nother class around how that's set up is, at the grocery store in particular, different from farmers markets, are growing your own, but we're not paying the true cost for food. So
and
when
we really
waste,
have never been.
Yeah.
It has been a very long time in this country that we've ever paid our fair share of what food actually costs.
And so in the picture here shows, and I've been guilty of all of these. So, waste can happen because you cook too much, whether it's for yourself, your family, a group of friends, or a larger group, to just miss, like over or underestimate all the portions and what people are going to eat. Even in potlucks, if you've got 10 people at a potluck, you cook for 12 people, there's just always too much food. So we cook portions, we cook too much, not storing it properly. That's kind of indicated with that picture of the refrigerator, and burning food, or just not cooking it correctly, preparing it correctly, so that it gets wasted. I remember doing this workshop once, and I had honestly that day burned a batch of muffins. And someone in the chat said, I do that too, but then I just pick off the burnt parts and I eat it. And I'm like, I do too, but my small kids won't. And so it also illustrated for me just different household situations, different family situations have different challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Another common cause of food waste is date labels. And we'll get into that a little bit more. And there are some resources to help with that. The only food date label that is regulated by the United States Department of Agriculture is baby formula.
That's it.
Everything else, any other food product that has a date label, whether it's best by, use by, store by, whatever by, or even just the date, it's unregulated. It's just some kind of communication that that food manufacturer is putting on to communicate something to the grocery store. So
Right.
grocery stores get caught up in this tangle of confusing communication with date labels. And by nature, we do too. Of course, we want to be safe and we don't want to serve bad food. But more and more research is coming out that, you know, if something is stamped with a date that says best by or use by, that's only just to indicate from the food producer it's peak quality. It is not a safety indicator at all. However, it's also a liability issue for grocery stores. So they end up, they have to take those foods off the shelf at that date. Or you might see that kind of quick sell area of a grocery store that's trying to move product quickly because of the date or see a 50% off. That's another way we as individual consumers can help with the preventing food waste problem, is to choose the thing that's going to be, you know, thrown out by the store, even though it's perfectly good.
Right. Another thing I'd like to touch on about why waste happens, specifically at home, is the third picture you can see on this slide. There's a psychological element that goes on in our own minds. And part of the refrigerator aspect of things is by some research that happened throughout the 70s to the late 2000s. They found that refrigerators actually were being made 15% larger. And because we as Americans do not like empty space, we don't like white space, we don't like seeing the sides of the fridge, we want to see a full fridge. That means that we have abundance, we have more than we need. Because of that, we're buying more to fill up the space that is in our bigger fridges, because there is only bigger fridges on the market now. It's really hard to find a small fridge. And if you're also buying a fridge for the size space that you have in your home, you don't want one that's got 12 or 14 inches of space above it, because that looks weird, right? So having a fridge too full can also hinder the quality of the food within it. If you cannot see the sides of your fridge, and if you overload it like the one that you can see in this image here, it does not allow air to circulate around the fridge. And having that lack of air circulation can cause things to go bad faster. Having those blank spaces within your fridge actually can help maintain your food quality for longer. Yeah.
Take out a drawer and just make it less places to store food, because you can't shrink the size of your refrigerator, but you could take out a shelf, which makes, a little bit less, and then of course get comfortable with that white space.
Which is good. The other thing that we have to consider as well, when we see food, we're also seeing larger dinner plates that we serve on. Statistically, from 1960 to just about the end of 2000, dinner plates grew by 36%. What we used to consider a typical size plate has grown. So when we're feeding people, they also don't like blank spaces on their plate. They think they're getting taken advantage of. But you have to realize that plate sizes are actually getting larger. I know for a fact, because I often thrift. I like going thrifting and finding very old plates like this big. I'm like, oh, was that a tea plate, or was that one for a tea? No, that was just the regular size of a plate back in the day. So you have to consider that there's lots of psychological little points that you can consider to not overstuff your fridge, to maybe take a smaller portion on your plate. That all of that can contribute to thinking about food in a better way.
And from the poll and a little bit of what we touched on, just to a little bit of information about, why this is mattering is not only we've talked about the food that's being wasted, but of course, everything that went into making the food. The video we mentioned showed the corn that feeds the cow, that gives us beef. But this illustrates this section in yellow, larger than the United States, like most of North America, is the amount of land in globally that is dedicated to growing food that is not eaten. And
that is grown but not consumed. That is an amazing amount of space.
This, I just think this graphic is worth showing there. So it's just a reminder. And I think, with the poll, we saw that, the other folks were here because it wastes greenhouse gases and resources. That this just emphasizes that we're, wasting all of the energy it takes to make the food, the water, the transportation, the packaging, the cold storage for transportation and at the store itself. All of those have tremendous greenhouse gas impacts. And if, a large percentage of them is being used towards food that's being wasted, it's a larger compounded waste.
Especially because in most developed countries now, or, first world countries, we don't eat seasonally. We can get strawberries in the dead of winter. We can make butternut squash soup when it's 105 degrees outside. We're not eating with the seasons anymore. And we have to transport the food that we want to eat anytime from other places on the globe that can make those. So traveling things up from South America or Australia, places that have a different winter than we do, completely different winter than we do, allows us to have food that we would not naturally have access to if we were growing it on our own land.
And as a reminder that this discarded food, if some of us are using that discarded food we'll talk about some strategies, but when it just goes into the landfill, you put it in your garbage and it goes right to the landfill, it's creating methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. And the greenhouse gas emitted by food waste, if it was measured as a country, like a country's emissions of greenhouse gas, it would be the third largest country, which is, to me, an astonishing, because I think countries in and of themselves are emitting a lot of greenhouse gases, but just the category of food waste in landfills is causing a huge environmental problem.
It also is taking up space that doesn't need to be utilized. We could be using it in different ways, which, I think there's a statistic out there that says we need to increase our food production by 60% within the next 30 years to keep up with population growth. And if we continue to discard food waste at that rate with the landfills we currently have, we're going to run out of space a lot faster than we think we are now.
But there is hope.
The food hierarchy that the EPA has put out, kind of a top-down approach for how important it is to use the food that you have. So for making sure that you're not buying as much as you think you might need, because most of it's going to waste. Then next, making sure that people are eating food before it is doing anything else. After that, making sure that animals are eating food. So worms is an option, but always feedstock. So cattle, pigs, chickens.
Yeah, your neighbor's backyard
chickens.
Your
neighbor's chickens. Yes, exactly. Give them food so they can eat. After that is composting and any kind of anaerobic digestion to break down that food and make it into something else. And then energy recovery, which is burning, which is destroying that food in the first place. So making sure that you are limiting what you have to actually utilize it properly, that is the top option that the EPA is giving to us to say, we can make a change.
And I like that crosswalk to how we think about our garbage and recycling, with reducing, reusing, and recycling. Yep. And this is just translated over to food.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And on this next slide, there's a lovely little picture. This food, don't waste it. With these 6 strategies, buy it with thought, cook it with care, serve just enough, save what will keep, eat what would spoil, homegrown is best. This is from World War I, like a century ago.
It's
So
still
it's
completely relevant. It is exactly the same message we're giving today.
Yep. So smart shopping and planning for your food. This idea of eat me first, or in my house, we call it moving product. What needs to go? But it's part of understanding spoilage and dates. Third, creative cooking. So in some ways, there's this, it's called upcycling. There's a whole new growing industry of businesses that are upcycling food. And then, of course, proper food storage so that what you're buying, making, or growing is going to last longer.
Stretching out your resources, making the most of what you have. That is
Yes.
key. For smart shopping, again, it takes just a little bit of time to prepare to go to the store, right? To make sure that you know exactly what you need when you're going to shop.
And if you're already doing this, give yourself a little pat on the back. Because it is, to me, it's one of like the simplest things. I've always done it because my mom did it. She did it in meat, produce, dairy, etc. That's how she always had her grocery list. It took me a while to understand what all that was. But the more that I talk about this and learn about this, the more surprised I am how many people don't have a grocery list when they go to the store. So it was kind of surprising but encouraging to me to know that this fairly simple step, it's accessible, it's paper and pen, or it's type of notes on your phone, it's low barrier, can have a huge impact.
Very low barrier, yes. Strategies for when you're actually going to the store as well are very important. So making sure that you don't go shopping for food when you're hungry. So making sure you have just a little snack before you go in, it reduces the amount that you buy considerably because you're not shopping with your eyes or your stomach, right? You're just shopping for what you actually need. What you can also do is you can think about your week. Think about when you're going to be cooking. Think about if you're going to be making a meal every single day. Is that necessary? How many people are you going to be cooking for? And then break down those recipes. Say, this list here on the screen shows stuffed peppers. They go through and they list out what they already have to make that meal and then what they need to finish that recipe. So considering what would actually make sense, what you can already use from your home, basically shopping your pantry, shopping your fridge before you leave the house.
And your
very
freezer.
Important. And your freezer, that's also very important. Incorporating things you've already made. So if, perhaps you have pasta sauce that you made lots and lots of and you've got it in the freezer, do a pasta bake night. Super simple. But it takes actually looking in your freezer and making sure you know what is in there first to make that plan. So just breaking it down, saying, okay, I need to make 3 meals for 3 people this week to feed us for the whole week. What could I make that would last us that long? And then thinking about it, writing your list, going to the grocery store, doing your shopping, and having exactly what you need for the whole week's worth of food. So much easier to do it that way rather than just going, well, I'm out of this, I'm going to the store. It is much better to go with a plan than to go by the seat of your pants, for sure. A neat thing that we can consider too when we're shopping bulk is making sure that we have the staples we need for things we cook often. I know that my house, we like a lot of rice. We like a lot of potatoes. So making sure we have the starches we need for the bases of our meals always in the house is very important. That will allow us to cook more things more often and use what we have.
All right, next strategy. Eating what you buy.
You'd think that this would be intuitive, but it's not. This is something we're really bad at as a as a people in this country.
And we have a list of resources that we'll make available to everyone at the end. And one of them is this one that you see in the black box here, savethefood.com. It is such a go-to resource
Absolutely.
with so much information and recipes and where to go for, how to use up the food. But it's even things like if, like that carton of milk in there is, partially full. Let's say I go to the store and I buy another thing of milk just to make sure, put that one in the back. So you've got kind of the one you're going to finish up front, the kind of the backup one next. All these little tips are going to help prevent food waste. We've mentioned not overfilling, to make sure to see what you have in the fridge. Kind of have regular places. So I know where to look for eggs when I need to see if I have eggs. I know where to go to look for vegetables and cheese. So there's kind of predictable places, which is also important if you live with other people.
There's also a really good component to that as well, where
and with part of that Eat Me First is like, so what do I do with the food? Like I've got half a thing of buttermilk and I don't want to make pancakes, and that's why I buy buttermilk. I am loving, while I have a lot of cookbooks at my house, I end up going to the internet a lot and I'll just Google like cookies with buttermilk. And now I have a new favorite chocolate cookie recipe that I can use that last cup or whatever of buttermilk on. So there are ways, and there are websites that will have available, but sometimes just going to the internet and finding out what do I do with, to be able to use something that's on its way to go. The one surprise that I've had through my learnings with this is with milk. Like if it smells, it doesn't mean it's bad.
Right.
It might not be okay to drink, but it's okay to bake with the milk, which was nice. And hard cheeses like cheddar, if they start to get moldy, or Parmesan, you can cut that part off and the rest is okay. Don't do something that makes you uncomfortable. I have friends that are immunocompromised and they don't feel comfortable being near food that has started to mold. So they don't do that. And that's fair. I respect that. In my house, it seems to work okay for me to cut off the moldy parts of something and keep using it. But again, these are like counterculture. Maybe not in your house, but certainly in the larger world. And the big part of this one too is give yourself a little patience and permission to question any date that is stamped on the food that you're buying. That it isn't a hard fast that it needs to go in the compost or it needs to leave your fridge right away. You're in charge of the date. It's not in charge of you.
Right.
And to find out what that date means. And honestly, I've heard this over and over, is research finds like really a sniff test is legit. Like that's what our human brains and noses are for. If something smells off, it is, and don't eat it, or cut that part off if you're comfortable in going. But
the research also shows that if it looks off, especially meat products, if they look funky, I had a half a steak that had been cooked on the stove, but that had this like weird glossy kind of texture to it. It's like, that's weird. That's a really strange thing. We have evolved to know what funky meat looks like, to know what bad milk smells like, to understand what truly spoiled food is, right? I think that's on the next slide. Spoiled food, and knowing specifically what spoiled looks like. We have an intuitive sense about it. We have, as a species, been able to eat different foods and experiment and see if it's edible, because we know it's not supposed to look a certain way over, thousands of years.
And we'll share a link from the USDA that gives us information about when to eat it and when to discard it. Their food safety and inspection is great. So it kind of looks like this on the slide.
Yep.
And I appreciate it because the USDA is going to be very conservative on the guidelines that they're giving.
Absolutely. So for example, I think Liz talked about the moldy block of cheese. Totally fine. Just cut off the mold. Strawberries are also totally fine if they look less than half rotten. Just cut off the bits that are weird. Same thing with ground meat. If it's slightly discolored, totally okay to eat. Just make sure that it doesn't have an odor. So there are little things that you can just check.
It's a continuum. And this is
Yes.
a journey that everyone is on. We're all starting at different places, and we all have different lifestyles, different health concerns, different motivations. And we're providing a wide buffet, if you will, of ideas.
Nice food analogy. I love that, Liz.
Option, pun intended, of strategies, ideas, research tidbits, best practices. But please, and I will say this to myself too, again, to give ourselves some permission to be learning and to adopt one habit at a time.
We do
And
not expect that you take away from
nobody.
this this chat that you should be doing all of these things all at once. Absolutely not. Like,
Absolutely, yeah.
if
We're all,
you can
yeah.
take a little bit away, just one thing, like if this section about using up leftovers really hits home with you, food that's already been prepared that is sitting there waiting to be eaten, if that's not something you naturally do, try it. That's great. If that's the one that you think that you and your family could utilize the most, awesome. But I totally agree, Liz. Like, don't feel compelled to think that you have to do all of these things.
Or take all of these on. Like even just like strategic grocery shopping and menu planning, that is just a constant evolution to really dial that in.
And like sometimes,
yeah.
And sometimes, like, I know these tips. We talk about them all the time. I forget. I go to the grocery store because it's my routine on Fridays. Like, even if I don't need to go, I still do. So just know that you have permission to try some of these out. If they don't work for you, don't do it. If the eat me first shelf is like a very strange idea to you, don't worry about it. Do something else. It's okay.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So with that, some of these ideas for using up leftovers, of course, soup is great, especially for like those floppy vegetables that might be ready to go. Throw them in a soup, roast them. They'll be hidden a little bit more. Making things like stir fries, fried rice. Those are great uses for last little bits of leftovers. Or throwing them in a breakfast burrito. That's what I do with kind of anything left over from the day before. I'll throw an egg on it, and that's how I'm using up a lot of food. Another great resource that I like to go to are healthy recipes from Food Hero recipes. And those are designed to use up common leftovers or little bits of something that you need to move up. And another piece about kind of not necessarily creative cooking, but when we are cooking, and I find that there's a nexus between people interested in preventing food waste and people that like to cook. It's not always there. But if you are someone that likes to prepare food, there are so many tips on how to prepare or cut a vegetable or fruit that minimizes the amount of waste. So how you're trimming your carrot, how you're trimming your onion, leaving the skins on from your potato or your carrot and just giving them a good scrub. And, cutting all the way down to the end. So when you're tailing and trimming your foods, there's always just like a little bit more of a food or the edible part that you can get out of it when you're prepping foods.
And Liz, I think this would be a good place to acknowledge that a lot of these tips and tricks that we've been discussing today revolve around having fresh food, having food that we're getting from produce sections at stores. Just as a person, a little personal anecdote here. I grew up very poor and often hungry. We did not have the same kind of access to fresh food that a lot of my peers at school did. So it was really weird that I would be bringing a can of Spam for lunch or Vienna sausages or something, because that's what we had access to. I just want to make space here to acknowledge that not everyone can buy fresh food and prep it, because a lot of people either cannot access it, don't have enough money to buy fresh, because sometimes it is more expensive to buy fresh food, and also that usually people on the lower income spectrum do not have enough time to prep food in this way and to think about menus because they're going to 3 different jobs to make ends meet. So I just wanted to acknowledge that quickly and just say, yes, these are great options if you have the time, if you have the capability of making these smaller changes in your lifestyle. That's awesome. But just know that it's not possible for everyone. We talked about earlier how there are certain things that should be in the fridge in certain ways. There are a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables that need to be stored differently. Not everything can go in the fridge or should be going in the fridge. Things like apples should be stored loose and away from other products, especially bananas as well. They both contain a chemical called, what is it? Ethylene? Is that it? Ethylene. Yeah. That is actually, it's a gas that these fruits off gas, which is very strange. But they actually encourage other products to go bad sooner. So a quick tip, if you have recently bought avocados and they're way too hard, pop them next to an apple for half a day and they'll be ready to go. That's something that came up in my life this week. So
and if you want it to stop ripening,
take the apple away. Yes,
put it in the fridge.
Storing leafy herbs, if you have access to fresh herbs or buying them at the store, storing them in a glass of water or wrapping them in a paper towel and putting them on the top, like in the top portion of your fridge, will keep them fresher for longer. And they'll not go wilty as quickly. Storing oranges loose in your crisper drawer, making sure that that is on the proper setting to be crisp. But things that can go in your cupboard, potatoes, those should not go in your fridge. They are actually served quite better if they're out. Same thing with onions. Any kind of root vegetable really does better if it's outside of a cold space. They like just kind of ambient temperature.
And back to our refrigerator, the door is warmer than the rest of the fridge. So that's better for condiments and not so great for things like milk. Excuse me. And the upper shelves are warmer than the bottom shelves in a refrigerator. And so use the bottom shelf for things like meat and fish, and the top shelf for things like leftovers or other things that could be, drinks or snacks, things like that.
Most refrigerators often have temperature adjustment options. So making sure that your fridge is below 40 degrees Fahrenheit is also a really good advice to keep it in the right space to keep it fresh for longer. Any warmer than that and things can go funny quicker.
And then to move on to the freezer, which is a very important component in preventing food waste, is not only putting things in the freezer, but then using them. So we mentioned, when you make your grocery list, shop your fridge, shop your own cupboard, and shop your freezer first. If you've got, like in this picture here, like it looks like there's some English muffins and things in there, plan on using the English muffins. That's a freebie there. You've already bought that. Or the picture on the bottom, you've made lasagna, you've made soups, you've made something that you love and you've got portions of, use it up.
Yep.
use that stuff first. Of course, it maybe goes without saying, but I need the reminder myself, whether it's a leftover in the fridge or the freezer, to label it. Don't trust that you're going to remember that you made lasagna on May 25th. Just lasagna, and just make a quick note of it. Or that you've opened that can of tomatoes and the other half is in there and you did that today. So you can, again, use your own best by dates so you know what those dates means. Or if someone else is looking in your fridge too, they know what's going on.
And something that has worked really well for me that I actually heard when this presentation was given to me the first time was keeping a notepad on your fridge, just one of those magnetic ones that just sticks on there, of what you have in the freezer and what's already made that you can just take out, either put into the microwave or put into the oven to warm up, and you're done. Having a physical list that you can see outside of your freezer has been so helpful for me. It has allowed me to see into my freezer
Nice.
that is arguably not very well organized. But having a physical list of what is in there so you know before you open.
And I was really happy to learn that freezer burn isn't bad. It might just impact the taste a little bit, but you just add a little more salt, throw a little bit of sugar, a little cream, a little whatever extra you're doing in there. But freezer burn is okay. So just other things to think about. And even if like I don't have a food dehydrator, I'll still do a low oven and dehydrate lots of kale or apples. So it's also finding that the tool itself doesn't have to get in the way of actually doing something.
Yep. Yeah, finding out how low your oven can go.
Yeah.
Wonderful use.
And we'll have these resources available. We'll email them out to everyone. But this is our most current. Yeah, we checked on this pretty recently, all of these resources. So it's got the links to things we've talked about, that food storage guide for your refrigerator. The third one down is the guesstimator. So clever. So how to estimate how much food you need for your guests. And so this is all kind of talking about edible food, not wasting all that good stuff, and how to use it well, use it long. And then here's just our quick list of, those food scraps. So inevitably, if something does go south, or those scraps that you're just not going to eat, I think here's a picture of Pete holding coffee grounds. Don't need to eat them.
No.
So, of course, they can go in worm bins and backyard composting that you can learn all about through the Master Composter Recycler program.
Yep.
To make part of your lasagna garden, which is kind of like compost on steroids for your garden. Not steroids in a bad way, but just like, wow, that's a great way to garden.
Good steroids. Only the good steroids.
Only the good stuff. Share Waste is a wonderful social, I guess, Meg, you're part of it. You want to?
I do. Yeah, I've been part of Share Waste for a little over 2 years now. This whole program revolves around people who make compost in their backyards and people who have food scraps to give to people who make compost in their backyards. Of course, there's always the organics service that we have through Waste Connections in the city limits of Vancouver. That started in October of 2019. For anyone
and over
who had,
50% of residents in City of Vancouver are subscribed to that.
Which, woohoo! That is great. It is a great option to make something out of your food waste, right?
Yeah.
To give it another life.
Set an intention. Is there something you're willing to try? A new strategy? And then again, a part of this is spreading the word. We have to kind of change the culture on some of this stuff.
Yep.
Hey, thank you so much, Meg. Thank you, Liz, for coming out. Tina, for running the slides.
Yes, thank you, Pete. Thank you, Tina. Thank you all for coming.
And we'll keep chipping away here. There's lots of food waste going. So
Yeah.
we need everyone's help.
Yep, we need your help. Thanks,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.